Welcome to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We have a very powerful show for you again today. We start out talking about the attacks on education and on access to special education in particular. After that, we dive into Latina Equal Pay Day, why it's important to you, me, and us, and what's happening with it. Following that segment, we talk about the Virginia elections. They're in the spotlight right now. And we close the show hearing from a state senator in Chicago about what's happening on the ground there. We're going to jump right in with our first guest. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined right now by a spectacular, wonderful, extra wonderful guest, Amy Harrison, who is a special education teacher. And this is a really important time to be talking about this because recently the Trump administration announced the firing of hundreds and hundreds of Department of Education federal staff who provide critical education access and support for children with disabilities. This means fewer protections when children with disabilities face exclusion, harassment, discriminatory discipline, and it also means barriers to access and inclusion in education. It also means without federal oversight, states could begin or continue ignoring or weakening disability rights laws altogether. I could go on for a long time because we have what I call a level 23 situation out of only 10 levels. This is like 13 levels beyond emergency. We just also had the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA Act, undermined, and it is bad, people. I'm not going to continue with stats in this moment because we want to hear exactly what this means in the classroom. And we have an expert on that with Amy Harrison. What is happening in the classroom given the chaos, the cuts, and the rollbacks that are happening at the federal level?
Well, I mean, it means a larger caseload for me. I am, like you said, I'm a special education teacher here in North Carolina. I work with kindergarten, first, second, and third graders with disabilities. Currently, I have 26 kids on my caseload. And that's a lot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you are dealing with or when you're working with kids that have severe behaviors, that have to have assistance going to the bathroom, things like that, that is very time consuming. And I have 5 kindergartners that I see for an hour a day, and we are all over the place. And it's just going to get worse when the cuts come, because they're going to decrease the number of teachers that they have if they can find teachers that want to teach. And it's our kids, the instruction that I give my kids is going to suffer because I'm going to have more of them. I'm not going to be able to individualize what I'm teaching to meet the kids' needs, to meet them where they're at. And that's the whole purpose of what I do.
The whole purpose. And before we had the IDEA Act, which now serves 8 million children nationwide. So we're talking about one classroom times, 8 million children nationwide. Only 1 out of 5 children with disabilities even had access to accommodations. So that means kids being completely left out, pushed out, and it also means our communities being left out and pushed out, because it means that people aren't getting the early intervention they need to be major contributors later on. It means kids are losing out on future success, and communities are losing out on that future success as well. And this year actually marks the 50th anniversary of the IDEA Act. Yet, instead of celebrating progress together, our nation is facing a sad time of watching the IDEA Act be dismantled and the very infrastructure created to protect children with disabilities being undermined, pushing millions of children back into a time when they don't have educational opportunities. What can parents and teachers and people who are worried about this do? Like, what are you seeing happening?
Well, I just got finished talking to a parent this afternoon, before I left school, and she was very worried. I told her we need to contact the legislators at the national level, our senators, our representatives, and tell their stories, because that's what's gonna,
Mm.
and also at the state level, because that is what I think moves people more than just statistics or me saying it's gonna be difficult. My kids aren't gonna get what they need. If it's coming from a parent that says, I'm worried my child who was born deaf and is hearing impaired is gonna lose, like she's not going to get her processor. She's not going to get her cochlear implants updated like they need to. She's not going to have the resources that she needs to be included in the classroom. That story is better coming from a parent or even the student themselves. Like, I'm not getting what I need to be successful. That's more powerful coming from them than coming from me as a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that is most important. And with the way that things are going, it's going to be up to the states more and more, and it's going to depend on who we elect at the state level as well as who we elect at the national level to make sure that our kids' rights and honestly, the whole disabled community, that the community of people, of the disabled people, that their rights are going to be undermined as much as the students that are sitting in my classroom.
It's so important. And I love that you lifted up the power of stories. That is a big deal. So we at Moms Rising have seen that stories do three things. I'm sure they do more than three things, but there's three primary things that we see regularly. One, just like you said, stories let elected leaders know what's really happening with their constituents. Stories give an eye into the realities of families' daily lives. Stories show both the contributions and the needs of people who need policy updated that reflects and respects who they are and how we can build a better community where everyone can thrive together. So, one, stories educate elected leaders and help them create better policy. Two, stories help set and shape the national narrative. Journalists need to hear stories too, so that they can help share the national narrative of also the realities of families. And three, stories help people know they're not alone. Stories help build a movement. Stories help show that when a ton of people have the same type of crisis happening at the exact same time, we don't have an epidemic of personal failures. Instead, we have national structural hurdles that we can and must solve together. Because it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be pushing people with different abilities out of the classroom. We don't have to be in a situation where education is underfunded. We don't have to have this situation. There are solutions. We can stop the cuts. We can reverse the cuts. We can build education instead of dismantle it. And stories show us that we're not alone and that we can build a movement to build a better tomorrow. Now, Congress has long had a bipartisan history of funding federal efforts to ensure that children with disabilities and of all abilities can access education. This is a negative, in my opinion, turning point in our history. Do you have a couple stories right now that you can share with our listeners and viewers about what this means for the students and people in the classroom? You don't have to share names, just maybe a little bit of anecdotes.
So, I want to share part of my story and how I became a special education teacher, because I went to an elementary school where the kids that were served through the special education classes were an integral part of the school. We ate lunch with them. We went on field trips with them. They were in our classes, things like that. If I would not have had those experiences, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. And I'm thinking, there's children, there are people in our schools right now, there are students that are going, oh, this might be something that I want to do. If they don't have that exposure to different kids of all abilities, they're not going to make that, they're not going to be as passionate, and they're not going to have those experiences. So that is something I would like to lift up, that future educators are sitting in our classrooms, and they are going to be exposed to a variety of kids with ability levels. And I mean, I'm thinking about one of my students who needs a lot of support to be in the general education setting. He I'm in there sitting next to him, making sure that he's doing his work, making sure that he is um focused and paying attention. If the cuts are, if these funds are gone, that's not going to happen. And he's making progress, he's doing everything that he needs to do. And the difference that I see from him, I've had him for the kindergarten through second grade. He's able to read, he's able to do a lot of things in the classroom that he couldn't do when he was 5 because of the support that he's had. And if the support is not there, he's gonna not make the progress that he needs to. He's not going to be able to fulfill his dream of joining the military and protecting our country. So that those two little anecdotes there, we've got to make sure that our kids get what they need to be successful. And with this defunding, it's not gonna be our kids aren't gonna be as successful.
I mean, 100%. When our kids aren't as successful, our communities aren't as successful, our
Yes.
economy isn't as successful, our country isn't as successful.
Yes.
And what we have right now is the future leaders of tomorrow. And being able in educational settings to take the time to figure out what are the tools for success for people who are perhaps coming at education from different angles is so important. Different people need different ways of education. Some
Yes.
people need more unique ways of education than others. But if we kept trying the same answer, if we didn't have different ways of thinking, then we wouldn't have new innovative solutions, right? Like we need lots of diverse types of learning, lots of diverse types of thinking, lots of diverse types of ideas. And when we just block that out wholly by doing just this one giant classroom of kids without any sort of paying attention to different styles of learning, then we just block out future opportunity. What do you think about that? For everyone.
And I know when we modify things for students with IEPs, students with special needs, it helps everybody. I know I do a lot of inclusion, and I don't just help my kids, I help every child in that classroom. And it's, oh, let's look at it this way. And I've had kids that go, oh my gosh, I understand now because you just explained it a different way. And we want to make sure that every child, like you said, is as successful as possible. And if we've got to try different things to make sure that we're doing that. So
I agree. Okay, I found Albert Einstein quote that I like. I'm just going to share. It is, are you ready? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them.
Oh,
and
I like
that's
that.
profound, right? And that means that we have to have respect for different styles of learners, different styles of thinkers, different sort of durations of time that it takes to learn things. Like, we're not all the same brain, and that's bad. That's good, not bad. So we need to have lots of teaching that respects and reflects the student as a whole. So thank you so much for being on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for all you do. We're going to take a quick break, but stick around. We'll be right back with our next guest talking about Latina Equal Pay Day and why it's important to everyone. We'll be back in a quick flash. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined by a very special guest, Laura MacCleery, who is with UnidosUs. Welcome!
Hi! So good to be here.
I'm so glad you're on. Can you share with us what is UnidosUs and what's happening?
So UnidosUs is the nation's largest Latino-serving, Latino-led civil rights organization. They're sort of like the NAACP, but for the Latino community. They were National Council of La Raza back historically, so they're 50 years old, and then they had a name change. They have 300 plus affiliated organizations around the country. So our community partners that do everything like serve immigrant communities, run job centers, our federally qualified health centers, And then we have a national office in DC, and I'm the senior policy director. So that means I get to represent the interests of the Latino community before lawmakers in the administration and on Capitol Hill, and do wonderful things like this, like talk to the community.
And recently, we just had Latina Equal Pay Day, which sounds like it's a good day. Hello, it is a bad day, people, because this is a day to activate, not celebrate. I was just looking up what is the wage gap, because I don't have it memorized. It changes, but the wage gap is significant right now. And can you tell us a little bit about the wage gap?
Yeah. So I'm trying to get more sense. There we go. So the Latina Equal Pay wage gap, I don't have it off the top of my head. I should have looked it up, but it's significant. And I can tell you some interesting things about Latinas. They are the #1 sub-demographic that forms new businesses. They're actually super entrepreneurial. And if you think about it, that could be like a small business that is running cleaning services. It could be a childcare center. It could be a food vendor of some kind, but they're hugely dynamic in terms of their ability to start small businesses and lead them. And the only drop that we saw in that activity was during the pandemic, when overwhelmingly they were the ones that stayed home to take care of kids. But, in general, what we've seen is a huge pickup even since the pandemic, where Latinas are just out there hustling every single day.
And I found the wage gap. It is sad news, you all. Sad news. So Latinas on average earn only 54 cents to every dollar that a white non-Hispanic man earns. For those working full-time year-round, it's just 58 cents to the dollar. That is not okay. That is ridiculous. There's a lot of policies that we need to pass that come together to help lower the wage gap. Paid family medical leave, childcare, access to healthcare, access to fair pay policies, access to sick days. Those policies are proven across the board to help lower the wage gaps between moms and non-moms, as well as to help stop the increased intensified wage gaps that moms of color are experiencing due to structural racism, including, as we're talking about right now, Latina moms, who again are earning 54 cents to a white dad's dollar. Not okay. We all lose out because, as you just said, Laura, Latina moms are starting businesses. They're growing the economy. They're contributing to the community. They're raising kids. They're the engines of our families and our economy as a whole. And also, the wages of women and moms, including Latina moms, is also what fuels our economy, because our economy is fueled by consumer spending. And Latina moms are a huge, powerful consumer force too. I don't know if you want to speak to that as well.
Yeah, well, there's a huge market share for the Latino consumer in general, and also a huge part of the workforce in general. So, 8 out of 10 new workers over the next decade will be Latino. A Latino eligible voter turns 18 every 30 seconds. So it's also an overwhelmingly young, energetic population in the Latino community, and highly interested in upward mobility, about parity with other demographic groups in terms of attendance in higher education institutions, though less likely to complete because of a lack of support, right? In terms of both families' understanding of what's needed to go to college and the resources that are needed to finish a degree. So we see a lot of promise and opportunity in terms of the way that the Latino population engages with the economy overall. And a couple of years ago on Labor Day, we put out a report specifically around Latinas and their opportunity. And it's what you said, access to paid family medical leave is super important. Access to paid or subsidized childcare is super important. And if you think about it, the #1 business started by Latinas is actually childcare services, a lot of them home-based. And so if you can give families financial support, either through the child tax credit being expanded or other specific child care benefits, then that is a twofer, because not only are you providing a safe, place for your child that is then, you know, affordable for families, but you're also employing lots of diverse populations, including Latinas, to provide that care and providing steady paying jobs for the work that is, you know, such a nurturing and supportive thing for families to have when they can have trusted childcare. So that's something that we get really excited about as a kind of you know, strategic opportunity, really, to build a floor under for affordability under families, and also to employ lots of folks who need jobs and who need to be better compensated for this incredible work that they do taking care of kids every day.
Yeah. And that compensation is super important. It's more important than most people realize, because particularly in the care industry, child care, elder care, all of the care, people cannot afford to stay in those jobs that is their profession, oftentimes because of the low pay. Right now, childcare workers are some of the lowest paid workers in the country. And yet childcare costs more than college for most parents. So the system is broken. We're between a rock and a hard place. That means we need to invest as a community, as a country, into childcare systems so that childcare workers can get paid, so parents can go to work, and so children can thrive with great early education. And a problem with early education having a high quality is if we end up having high turnover of early education teachers, and you end up having high turnover of early education teachers if we are paying sub-living wages, which in too many areas we are. So it kind of all ties together. Equal pay for equal work. Fair pay is good. So in summary, here's my summary, you all. It hurts everybody when people in the Latina community and in any community don't get fair pay. We all do better when we're all doing better. Literally, we all do better. Our families do better. Our businesses do better. Our economy does better when we're all doing better. When we have pay parity, it puts boosters into our economy because people can go out and buy those new shoes for their kids when their kids grow out of them. And hello, how do the kids grow out of the shoes every 3 days? I do not know. Feet grow faster than anything I've ever seen. But, you know, you go out and you buy the shoes, you buy the groceries. When you buy the groceries, it helps the farmer, it helps the truck driver, it helps, you know, all the grocery store. You know what I mean? So it's like we are the engines of our economy. And when we get fair pay and we can afford the things we need to build good lives, then the whole economy thrives. So that's my summary. We all do better when we all do better. So we got to end unfair pay. What's your take?
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I want you to sing it from the rooftops. And we've seen a few states like New Mexico enact statewide paid family medical leave laws just recently. And I want to say, like, that gives me hope. We're doing a study with some researchers about the qualitative impacts for families when you have paid family medical leave, and really trying to document the improvements in people's lives. You know, you can take time off work when you need to, when you're sick, you're not spreading a virus that you might have. You can stay home with family members who need care, and that saves, you know, the ability of the medical system to avoid emergency costs. And you can play the role in our families that we're supposed to play, which is being there for our loved ones. So it's super important that we all understand that this is an aspect of our national laws that is badly out of step with every other country around the world with our economic resources, and it needs to be fixed. And it will be good for everyone once it is. It will benefit families up and down the income ladder with flexibility. And I think it will create more porousness about the idea that working moms may need to take some time off work and can go back into the workforce without paying a penalty. Also, because we just have such a rigid system right now where there's a kind of implication if you leave the workforce for any length of time around your ability to work. And it's so unfair to women. And it's so unfair to families in general. And so I think, you know, if we get to better and more equal systems of compensation and more understanding of what laws support families, that's really good for everyone, and good for the ability of women to go back to work and earn a fair wage.
150%. So we know, you all, that solutions are possible. We know what solutions help lift the economy, lift families, lift Latina moms, lift moms of all backgrounds. We know what helps. We also know that the inverse of that hurts our families, our businesses, and honestly injures our economy. Right now, we have Republican leaders in Congress and Donald Trump doing some really regressive, toxic, damaging, bad laws, like undermining Medicaid, undermining the Affordable Care Act, undermining access to health care. And yet, study after study shows that having access to healthcare is one of the key ingredients to getting wage equity, to getting pay parity, to breaking down discrimination across our country. And right now we have something really terrible happening. Trump and Republicans in Congress have made extreme cuts to Medicaid, to pay $170 billion for, separating families, human rights abuses, and terrifying hardworking immigrants. People who, as we've just been talking about, are essential to our care workforce, to our entire workforce, to running and building businesses, to our families, hello, to our economy, and most definitely to our future. And at Moms Rising, we know our nation needs a safe and orderly immigration process that balances compassion and security, not cuts to healthcare, and not cruelty. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about the impact of the current leadership doing the inverse of what study after study show actually helps boost our economy and our families.
Yeah, I have to say it's been shocking to see the amount of threat and fear in the communities in places like Chicago and Los Angeles and Portland about the sort of just needless rappelling off buildings in the middle of the night and zip tying children. I mean, that is so far outside what immigration law enforcement has ever looked like in this country, going back 50 or 60 years when they had terribly, racially profiled kind of operations that were targeting communities. And so we see that in those neighborhoods, children are afraid to go to school, parents are afraid to go to work. The whole environment around community life and the way people show up for each other is, of course, encouraging. In some ways, we've seen communities step forward and take care of their neighbors. But in general, the businesses are taking a hit, restaurants are taking a hit. And of course, people are very frightened. And I just don't think we should have cruelty as policy in a democracy.
Cruelty should never be policy.
Cruelty should never be policy. We believe in the rule of law and due process. And of course, we think immigration rules matter and immigration enforcement is important. It's important to address the border. It's important to make sure that immigration is what we call firm, fair, and free of cruelty. So it's not that we are for a free-for-all, but I think what we're seeing now goes way too far in terms of violating American values and norms and having a lot of effects for the communities that are being directly impacted. And as you said, it's being paid for on the backs of egregious, horrific, historically profound cuts to needed services for everyday Americans that are absolutely meant to address the unaffordable costs of healthcare and provide insurance coverage, that are meant to provide families with a tax credit, that are meant to provide food and nutrition assistance for families that need it the most. And so, I think when you think about robbing, the pockets of ordinary households to pay for the building up of all of this enforcement, and I just, the traffic on the border has slowed to a trickle. It's nothing. And so, you just wonder where all the urgency is coming from. Why the need to act in the middle of the night, to come into cities, right? Why? When we could be doing a kind of orderly process consistent with American values, consistent with human rights practices and due process. what we see is people are whisked away into these large detention center tents and deprived of access to counsel, deprived of being able to talk to their families who don't even know where they are in many cases, not able to talk to clergy. I mean, that is not the American way. It just isn't.
And you're right. We've often had net negative migration on our southern border. That means more people from the U.S. are going south than people south are coming north. And that is really important question. Why the emergency when there is not the data to support it? I want to thank you for being on. Thank you so much for all that you've talked about, shared. Everybody, please join, sign up, and support UnidosUs. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. Next up, we're talking about the Virginia elections, why they're in the spotlight in every state right now. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined by a nation-lifting, nation-shaping guest, Hala Ayala, who is the state chair of the Virginia Democratic Women's Caucus. Woo! Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And recently I've been appointed National NOW's PAC director.
What? I love this.
A lot of girl power in this space.
I love this so much. Okay, we have so much to talk about. First, I want to bring the entire national audience into what is happening in Virginia. Why are all eyes on Virginia? How is Virginia a nation lifter in and of itself, even though it's only one of all of our states?
One. It is, well, it is a shapeshifter and it's been a nation builder as far as elections go. In 2017, I'm formally elected. I came in with that blue wave. We taught the nation how it was done. Women were fierce. We were tenacious. We were unapologetic. And we came from every demographic walk of life, every economic group you can imagine. Some of us walked in there with 15 cents to our names, right? But we were determined to get across the finish line, and then it shaped Congress, right? More women were elected. And so my philosophy is that if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu, right? So with all of that energy this year, we have our opportunity to elect our first woman governor, but we have to elect the right woman governor. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm excited. So I would say Virginia is transformative and it's transitioning so quickly. We're still a purple state, although nationally people think we're a blue state. We're not. We have gone back and forth. We are a bellwether state, and sometimes no matter where the wind blows, it could blow in the wrong direction if you're not careful.
Well, what's happening in that governor's race?
I'm going to use a little bit of my Southern roots. Honey, it is cooking. Let me tell you all something. It is fiery. You have Winsome Sears, who I ran against in 2021 on the Democratic ticket for lieutenant governor. Of course, Republicans won by a very small margin. Their story is not quite that truthful or transparent, if you will. And so now they're running, and it's just been really I don't want to say entertaining because that's the wrong word. It's just been really a lot going on, especially with the federal firing of the workforce, especially with immigration, people getting snatched off the streets. People are now being furloughed and potentially, losing their job again, right? So I had a friend who visited us from another country a couple of weeks ago, and she's like, literally, Hala, our country is looking at you all as the unflushed toilet of the United Nations, meaning it is a real show. So you can fill in the blank, but with our governor's race, we have an ability and the opportunity to change that. So Abigail Spanberger is running on the Democratic ticket. You have Winsome Sears on the Republican. We want you all to do the right thing. Get out the vote for the right woman. That is, to me, Abigail Spanberger.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about her record? She's done a lot to champion the economy, to champion businesses, to champion women, children, and families. Can you talk a little bit about her record for our listeners who are like, who is Abigail Spanberger? Who is she?
Who's Abigail? Well, I'm going to tell you, she has been a champion and fighter for workers and families, especially if you can remember during COVID when we talked about using one of those military policy acts. I can't remember the the name, but it was her that came up with this ideal of, if we use this particular policy, we're able to get items like baby food into our states. We're able to use these resources. And so I think, when you have moms at the table, when you have women who, even like myself, a mom, several kids, they put you through it. They put you every trial and test. There is nothing that a country's policy can put you through that your children will not put you through. And you've got to constantly think on your feet. And so Abigail used those resources, or tapped into it. She's also a former CIA analyst. She's done law enforcement. She's done almost every job known to any individual. And so we're very excited for her. She's been a congresswoman for over 2 terms. She did some transformative work there, and continues to want to do that here in Virginia. Like, Virginia is one of those places where we have the Voting Rights Act. And as you've seen yesterday, SCOTUS is on the precipice of rolling back voting rights, right? Not here in Virginia. Not today, Satan, as my mom would say. So so Abigail has an extensive record, and I'm just really excited to see her serve in this capacity. I've helped Abigail since she's first ran, knocking doors, getting on calls, making sure we get out the vote. And so for your listeners today, this is what we can do to make sure we protect democracy. Not only people are looking at us from inside, meaning the United States, because Virginia and New Jersey are the only 2 states with elections every year, but they're also looking at us from abroad. As I said, my friend came and visited me. She was like, I hope Virginia can pull this out, pull this through, and that we get off the sidelines. Because we can't do that. We need some hope. We need something to help lift this heavy, because we're just watching, y'all, and it just seems to be going downhill daily, with everything that's happening. So this will be the bright spot, or the bright light at the end of the tunnel, that we're going to send a resounding message here in Virginia that, I don't know if it's appropriate to cuss, Kristen, but we're not taking that man shit. We're not taking his shit. We're going to come, we're going to show up, we're going to show out and tell him what he should do on November the 4th. We're not taking him. We're not putting up with him. So
yeah, and this brings up something really important.
Yeah.
Elections are critical right now at every level.
Absolutely.
City, state, county, obviously federal, but judges, elections, many places have elections for judges, not all. But sometimes there's these off year, and I'm doing quotes, off year elections, air quote. And people are like, it doesn't matter if I vote in an off year election. It actually does matter if you vote in an off year election.
It does.
And those local elected officials right now are more important than ever at holding the line on freedom of speech, at holding the line on our basic constitutional protections. Can you believe that those are under attack? Like Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, no matter what party you are, right now, there is actual data showing that key components of our U.S. Constitution and our Bill of Rights are under attack. And you can see it in the court decisions. You were talking about that too. Like, you could see what's happening when you pay attention to the court decisions. Don't pay attention to the partisan football if you don't want
look
to.
What's going on behind us.
Yeah, this is an actual crisis of democracy, no matter what party you belong to. Now, you and I happen to be Democrats, and also anybody who's studied social studies should be concerned right now. Do you know what I mean?
They sure should, girlfriend. I'm telling you, I have this blue brick wall behind me, and we call it here in Virginia the blue brick wall, because, in other words, there's the Senate Pro Tem, Senator Louise Lucas. And if you haven't met her, she is one feisty grandma. I call her grandma. I am granddaughter 2.0. I've been adopted and into the legacy. She is the most senior and the first Black woman Senate Pro Tem. And she's as frank as I am. She is just like, we're not putting up with this craziness. Y'all need to do the right thing. Like, we try, Black women, we have shown up and said, look, we told you what was going to happen in 2024. Guess you didn't believe us. You ask us every day, do you believe what's happening? We're like, we've seen shit before. We know what that looks like. And we told you to avoid it because it's ugly. We don't want you to have to be subscribing to all of this craziness, but here we are. So I think people should understand the importance. People have died for the right to vote. We have been very comfortable saying, oh, we'll vote the next time, or we'll do this next time. There was no next time. This is it. And to your point, state legislatures are having to be the firewall or the blue brick wall against, and it's not really about Democrat or Republican. It's about upholding the Constitution, giving people the ability to make the choices that have been granted to them through this Constitution. And every day, this orange person,
menace, the orange menace. Also, I call him the malignant Cheeto.
The orange devil is driving me absolutely crazy, and I laugh from crying, so I could keep from crying because it has been so heavy, and and eggs are not going down, groceries are not going down. He just lied. And the
it's
thing
the
is,
opposite. We're calling it Trumpflation. Trumpflation.
There you go, Trumpflation.
Coffee. I love coffee. Look, I got coffee even right here. Up 33%. Vegetables up 40%. Even washing machines are up 12%. That is Trumpflation. He ran on the promise of lowering costs. The opposite is happening. And I agree with you. This is the worst I told you so moment ever. This is an ethically bad I told you so moment. I'm like,
now ask a mom. We don't want to tell you I told you so, but we give you fair warning. We give you several warnings. We're like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't. Do you believe I got this, boo-boo? Yeah, we believe it because we know what it looks like, right, from experience. And what pains me is that people who didn't choose this path are being impacted. And people who thought something different and was bamboozled by this orange devil was also bamboozled. And yes, that's what I said, devil, because that's what he is. It's evil. When you go and you attack humanity at its very core, when you try to steal things and take away rights, there is nothing Christian about that. There is nothing godly about that. There is nothing good about that. So, I don't know where we're going to go from here, but Virginia, we're going to get it done right because we have attitude from I don't know where, but we have attitude and we have spunk and we have fire, we have fight. And Kristen, I'll tell you what, again, we're not doing this shit.
Yes, everybody.
We're not partaking.
Let's talk about actions. We have like 2 minutes left. So actions. Everybody needs to double check that they're registered to vote. Everybody needs to vote.
IWillVote.com will tell you everything. IWillVote.com.
Yeah, exactly. Go to IWillVote.com. You can double check that you're registered to vote. You can get registered if you're not. You can do all the things. Check with your friends. Check in. Hey, are you registered to vote still? Double check that. And then make a plan to vote because we really need everybody voting, especially in these off-year elections. It can be a little daunting. Like you could look at the ballot and there are 923,000 people who you have never seen before in these very local elections. Those people make a big difference. Those are lots of people who implement the policy, who interpret the policy, who create the local policy. So Google can be your friend. You can just Google those people. Sometimes you might have a local paper who does endorsement slates. Go ahead and do that. Check in with your friends in Virginia. There's only a couple states that have gubernatorial elections this year. Virginia's one of them. New Jersey's another. So check in with your friends who have the bigger elections. Make sure they're registered to vote. What's your closing advice?
Get off the sidelines and get out and vote.
And what's giving you hope? We talked about a lot of despair and reasons for not hope. What's giving you
know what, Kristen? Maybe it's the fight and everything I've been through personally in my lifetime. In my bio, you could Google it, you can find it. I'll tell you, the devil may never sleep, but neither do I. And we're not going back. We're not putting up with this. We're going to get out and vote. We're going to answer the call. And then we're going to get to the fight ahead of us, which is to make sure Trump doesn't come in our backyard and cause any more hate and discontent and distraction and all other of his bullshit that he's trying to do from his little gold over. Oh, I can't wait till he's out because we have some rebuilding to do. So if you're passionate and you're tired and you're sick and you're tired and all of those things, get out and vote because our life is going to depend on it. There is no win that we're going to give that man, none. And we're going to keep bringing it to him every day. And we're going to show it through our vote, not only through the polls, but continue to engage our legislators.
Thank you so much for all you do, for your leadership, for being on. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearts, hearts, hearts.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. Next up, we're talking with a state senator from Chicago about what's happening on the ground there. Welcome back to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Rao Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. We are joined by a very, 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 very important guest, Senator Graciela Guzmán of Illinois, state senator in Illinois. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad you're on. Illinois has a special place in my heart. I was born in Chicago. Hello, Chicago. And like all of us, am seeing the terrible, awful, very bad headlines about what's happening in Chicago. Can you share a little bit of a perspective of somebody on the ground about the experience of people in Chicago right now?
Of course. So, I think what I'll precursor this with is I represent Illinois' 20th district, which includes communities in Northwest Chicago, including Albany Park, MacCleery, and Logan Square for my folks that know Chicago well, like you. And why I mention those communities is they are deeply immigrant communities, intergenerational. And so what we have seen on the ground for months and months has been an escalation in ICE's tactics in our local communities. Everything from the use of tear gas near schools to emergency departments, violent tactics to literally tear our neighbors away through their windows, tearing down windows and doors, active aggression towards US citizens and folks that are trying to use their constitutional rights to observe what is occurring and document. And it's been incredibly scary and a terse environment for folks that are doing rapid response. And as you can imagine, the impacts of this are much deeper than just our immigrant community. It's the public safety. And so we have been busy on the ground trying to keep neighbors safe through school watch, through rapid response work, through know your rights work. And so it's been an intense, deeply emotional setup.
And I think it's so important, all that you talked about in terms of community education, especially know your rights work. For people who are curious right now, what are some of the most important rights that everyone should know about?
Well, I think one of those most foundational rights is, that how ICE is operating in this moment is to move indiscriminately in our community. So they will come up to someone and ask them very discriminatory questions, such as, do you speak English? Where are you from? Where do you live? And so the most foundational right we have is actually to not answer, to remain silent, right? The other right that is really important to this situation is that they are supposed to present you a signed judicial warrant, right? And so in many instances, they are not doing so. They are, again, using discriminatory tactics to try to find community members that they can literally kidnap off of our streets, and they are not adhering to the use.
Do you have advice for people in terms of places to go to find out more information on people's rights?
Yeah, so there is a lovely suite of resources that we trust with the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights, ICER. They also have a hotline at 855-435-7693. And both of these are brilliant tools. So their social media does everything from helping folks understand where ICE might have been spotted in our community to helping amplify many of the constitutional rights that I have asserted here. Also helping folks locate legal resources and other resources they might need in this moment. And so great resources for folks.
And in this time of it's really unprecedented time of disaster, what is giving you hope?
I think what is giving me hope is seeing the mobilization of our communities. I think I kind of mentioned in my initial opening remarks just how broad some of the impact of what ICE and the militarization of our communities is doing, right? We're seeing folks be violently handled. We're seeing folks be kidnapped. We are seeing folks be tear gassed, right? And so the conscientiousness that is occurring across our community, where we have neighbors caring for neighbors, is so important. It's so significant. And I say that because in this moment where the immediate thing of time that we can hold feels so dark, what gives me hope is that I think all of the ingredients for us to build long-term change are here. You know, together we can change the conditions that allowed the Donald Trump, that allowed for authoritarian rule to enter the White House and our community areas to be completely changed. So that's what gives me hope, is community coming together to say, we want something else. We don't want our neighbors taken out. We don't want violence, and we find safety in each other.
I think that's so important. Do you have advice for other areas? And I'd just like to note that the places that Donald Trump is working to militarize are primarily Democratic strongholds of Democratic voters. And he's kind of ignoring Republican areas. And what is your take on that?
Well, I think when I think about why Chicago, which I'm being asked often in states like Illinois these days, you know, it's a couple of tenants, right? It's literally in the core of Chicagoans. We resist. It is in our traditions, from union organizing to community organizing, to resist. You know, things like authoritarian rule, things like fascism. And so I think that's a tenet of, you know, what this administration is seeking to silence and reduce in our capacity building. That's one piece. I think also just a very active resilience, right? We are not going to bring us down. We are resilient. We will continue to fight. We will continue to build community. And they are also seeking to step that effort so that other cities and other states can be inspired by the actions of Chicago. And I think the part that, again, for all of the heaviness of the movement work that we are doing in Chicago, is that we're hopeful, we're joyful. We continue to do that because our folks need to see that in this moment, we can continue to ground our humanity and solidarity and a shared understanding that we have to overcome, because ultimately authoritarian rule needs an enemy. And the public enemy that the Trump administration has chosen is immigrants. And obviously, you know, we are very fearful for what that could mean for other populations. But in this moment, shared solidarity is how we're going to navigate this, and why the Trump administration has sought to make Illinois and Chicago a case example. But I would posit to you, we're an example in what it means to resist, to fight back, to do it with our people. And there's a reason we're being successful in those efforts and are going to continue to do so.
Yeah, and I think it's important to raise right now to our listeners and to our audience is that the function of the U.S. military, the actual function, is to protect all of us from foreign enemies, not from Portland, Oregon, not from Chicago, Illinois, not from any place in the United States of America. In this country, we have local and state police for law enforcement, not federal troops. Again, I'll say that. In this country, we have local jurisdiction, not federal troops in our communities. So we need to have the president stop deploying the U.S. Army against Americans. I think that's really important. And it's not constitutional. Like, I want to say, Mr. President, please read the Constitution. And I'm wondering, what is your take on the absolute breach of our Constitution that's happening in Chicago and across America?
I think the broad illegality of it all, right? I think to bring into question, you know, what is foundationally part of our quote unquote American experience, right? That we have shared values, that we have rights that our founding fathers fought for, that they are codified in the Constitution. And apparently Donald Trump and the folks that seek to keep him in power and continue to descend our country into fascist rule don't know or share that tradition, right? And so again, I think we are here ultimately at a crux of how are we going to mobilize to ensure that a White House that does not believe in our shared humanity, that does not believe in these rights, unless you are one of the wealthy few, that does not believe in our ability to live safely and with the resources that we live and that we need to live in our community, rather, that all gets to change. And I say that because I think it's not just the tools that are being employed, right, and the individual instances of them. It is the constant wearing down on the psyche, because that is what they're seeking to do. to create a conscientiousness that this is somehow okay when it is not the norm, to shift our understanding of norms with one another by weaponizing communities against one another. Meanwhile, they continue to promulgate one of the largest financial increases to mass deportation at the expense of our healthcare, at the expense of the safety net, right? So it's a really horrible game of hide and seek in our communities, and our communities deserve more than that.
That's such an important point. And I just want to lift to our listeners and audience, Medicaid provides care to 72 million people across America. In fact, Medicaid is utilized more frequently in Republican areas than Democratic areas. But Trump and Republicans in Congress just made extreme cuts to Medicaid, cutting 17 million people off Medicaid just to pay for $170 billion increase in funds for separating families, human rights abuses, and terrifying hardworking immigrants. Our nation needs a safe and orderly immigration process that balances compassion and security, but not cuts to healthcare, and definitely not cruelty, which is what we have right now. In this context, how important is it for people to get active and vote in local elections for city, county, state, and local elections right now?
It is absolutely essential. Everything we are doing in this moment to build towards the tide that will shift midterms is essential. And I can tell you here anecdotally that in our suburbs and many local elections that have happened since Trump ended up in office, seats have been turned that were traditionally Republican to Democrats. What that tells us is that not only is this administration unpopular, but his tactics are unpopular. And certainly, what is being employed violently in our communities is not popular. It's not what people want to see, especially, to the point of the previous conversation around the systemic de-investment in many of the resources we all collectively need, right? So us mobilizing right now to share this message, to take action to protect our neighbors, to mobilize towards taking an action at the ballot box is essential in securing our collective future.
Yeah, I mean, and we need excellent local leaders elected, like state legislators, city council members, more than ever. And can you speak a little bit more about the importance of that? Because we typically see a big drop off on quote off year, end quote elections. But right now, those off year elections are really on years.
Well, and I think that's that end, right? Like democratic processes don't have an on and off button, right? And so we have to have sustained organizing to be able to weather what is occurring in this moment. We're going to need sustained engagement to get us through the midterms. And we're certainly going to need sustained engagement through the remainder of this administration and beyond to ensure that, again, one, that we can take control of our democratic process to ensure that our democratic institutions and what we just talked about, everything from values to what is codified in our Constitution, is being upheld. Two, to ensure that fascism is not the way, the American way, despite what Trump and other folks that support him would like to see occur in our country. And three, for the very survival of our community. Immigrants, folks with disabilities, our trans community, other folks, they cannot wait for us to decide to mobilize. If it was up to the Trump administration, all of those folks would not be on this earth, right? And so we need to collectively move with urgency to ensure that we have a shared future to fight for.
And if people are thinking about running for office, if they're listening to you right now, like, yes, I need to run for office, do you have advice?
I think what I'd say to you as somebody that 3 years ago never thought she would be running for office, this world needs folks with moral clarity, with a really clear connection to their community, and why it's so essential to be hands, heart, and mind in the work right now. And so if you're someone that kind of just checked off those boxes and thought to themselves, damn, I'm really proud and passionate about my community, don't disregard the role that you can have to transform our world through elected office.
This is a moment where we need as many leaders rising as possible, stepping forward, joining together to protect our communities across the nation from this disaster that's happening. And this disaster, quite honestly, is impacting Republicans, Democrats, Libertarian, Green Party people. When we're talking about getting rid of healthcare. Again, the healthcare that's being taken away is disproportionately actually impacting people in Republican areas. So yes, Democrats brought you Social Security, the Affordable Care Act, and a lot of policies that help people build good lives. But Republicans are taking it away from everyone right now. So we need to stand up, speak out, no matter where we stand on the political spectrum, to protect our communities and to protect the policies that we hold dear and have all voted for as well. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for sharing what's happening in Chicago as well. And thank you for your leadership.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's it for our show today. Thanks so much for tuning in as we tackle the top topics facing our nation in a way that requires the most boring disclaimer in the history of the planet Earth. Here it goes. Views expressed on this show are those of the individual speakers and should not be attributed to Moms Rising, to this station, or to any news or social media service that may disseminate a recording of this show to the public or to any segment of the public. Boom! We'll catch you next week.